Hello and welcome to Tête-à-Tête, France 24's flagship interview show. Our guest today is Bill Gates. He is the co-founder of Microsoft, and he is the co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Thank you very much for being with us.
Great to be here.
So since the inception of the foundation, I believe over $77 billion in grants. The endowment is around $75 billion, so a major player in global health. The world leaders gathered in 2015 at the UN and defined 17 sustainable development goals. With the pandemic, with the wars, it seems more than halfway through 2030, we're not getting there. Are you concerned by this?
I certainly am. The first set of goals were from 2000 to 2015, and there was incredible progress. We've seen the number of children who die under the age of 5 cut in half, but almost all of that progress was in that 2000 to 2015. As soon as we got the pandemic, interest rates, instability, now our progress is really stopped, and in a few cases, like in Africa, going backwards. So we need to rededicate ourselves to the world's children. They should survive, they should thrive through good nutrition. These are investments that are less than 1% of government budgets to help the poorest country, but the visibility of that has gotten too low, so we need to rededicate ourselves.
Right, and the trend is a worrying one. I mean, obviously there's the war in Ukraine, there was the pandemic. You also have let's define them as inward-looking movements politically on both sides of the Atlantic, which means less development aid. And that's a concern because there have been targets for that. They're not being met, and they're often being dismissed.
Now, aid, which we had hoped would go up for the poorest countries, has gone down quite a bit. And because we save lives for very little resource, we'd like to highlight historically, the generosity from France in particular has been fantastic. Global Fund, which is about HIV, TB, and malaria. Gavi, which is about vaccines that have saved a lot of those lives. So countries should feel good and challenge themselves that even with all these priorities, the world's poorest children still need to weigh in.
Right, because you mentioned vaccination. The levels have not gotten back to pre-COVID for simple vaccination. I'm not talking about COVID vaccination. How worried are you about this, and what effect is it having concretely?
Well, the good news is that we're always coming up with improved vaccines. We've gotten the cost of those vaccines over time to be half of what they were. So we, even with modest increases, we can add things like a HPV vaccine to protect girls and women from cervical cancer. But those vaccines and getting the coverage of those vaccines up to where we were before, that's the best buy in terms of helping improve the human condition.
Right. You mentioned Africa. In Africa, malaria is a much bigger deal than any other disease, one could argue. It kills 500,000 kids every year. There is some hope on the horizon. 2 vaccines are being distributed in up to 15 countries. Your foundation funded a vaccine. It stopped because you probably had doubts. Is this the magic bullet, or do you think people should not be so optimistic about eradicating malaria, especially in Africa?
Well, malaria, no doubt, needs more funding, and we can be optimistic about the set of tools coming along. The new vaccine in particular is not a magic bullet. It only protects children for well under a year. And so we'll use it and learn about it in a few places, but we'll still use bed nets and drugs. And we need to keep working on a much better vaccine that would give you lifelong protection. But malaria is a super important disease. It is promising, including in the decades ahead, that we should try and eradicate that. Polio's the disease that we're prioritizing right now. With a little bit of luck, in the next 3 to 4 years, we'll get that done, and then we can take on malaria.
Have we learned lessons from the pandemic? You warned about pandemics before COVID. You're shrugging. Why?
No. It's unfortunate that we weren't well prepared for that pandemic.
Are we better prepared today?
Only slightly. I mean, our understanding of how to make drugs and vaccines was improved. Recommitment to the WHO is where we share information and coordinate activities. That's taking longer than you might have expected. Agreeing to do this environmental sewage surveillance so we can see it quickly. So a few things are going well, but I've been surprised the world hasn't come together quite as well on being ready for the next one.
So we're not ready for the next one?
Not as much as we should be.
In many poor countries where your foundation intervenes, the health system is not good enough. And many of those countries have a huge debt. And they have to service the debt rather than invest in schools or hospitals. Are you calling for debt alleviation, cancellation, in order to help them reach the levels they need on health and education?
No, absolutely. As African debts have gone up, as interest rates have gone up, that is choking off basic development needs. And so they need some of our generosity should be helping to reduce that. When you think about health systems in these countries, it's not so much hospitals. It's a nurse going out and helping a mother who's pregnant, or a nurse going out and helping with those vaccines. So it's pretty basic stuff and very low cost. But the interest challenge is worse now than it's been any time this century, and hopefully that's part of our generosity helps relieve that burden.
Do you have to relieve it or cancel the debt?
It's kind of the same thing. Yes, you want to free up their money, so instead of spending more on interest, they're able to go back and focus on health and nutrition.
This means China has to be involved, because we know lots of those countries have big debts towards China.
A few of them, yeah. Ethiopia, Angola. It's quite a mix in Africa, but you need to bring all the debt holders together.
Right. In terms of climate change, you've invested in new generation nuclear power, just very recently in the U.S. Obviously, this is a controversial issue because nuclear is scaring lots of people because of what happened in the past. Do you really believe that this is the key to really fight climate change?
Well, for climate change, we're going to need a lot of technologies. We need solar and wind and batteries, new ways to make steel and cement, and lots of things over on agriculture side. I do believe that nuclear fission, particularly in next generation, whose costs are far lower and whose safety is much simpler and therefore far more guaranteed, I do think that has to be part of the tools we have, because we have to move to green energy pretty quickly. And so we need contributions from nuclear because it's not weather dependent.
Right. So you're confident that this will also be the case in other countries. France is obviously a country where nuclear power is central.
Well, France has done a very good job on reducing its greenhouse gas emissions because of its commitment to nuclear. And, we need to take nuclear forward to be even safer and even lower cost.
Right. I want to get to the political situation in the United States. It's been shifting a lot. There was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Joe Biden decided not to run for a re-election. Is Kamala Harris the person you would wish as the next U.S. president?
I don't tell other people how to vote because I'm so associated with the foundation that works with any administration. I think it's great to have somebody who's younger, who can think about things like AI and how we shape that in the right way. And I certainly offer up my opinions to the politicians who are interested. So it's going to be, an interesting election. I hope the new government is one that cares about our allies, cares about climate. I think it is a very important election.
Right. It doesn't fit the description of Donald Trump, what you just said.
No, my individual vote, you might be able to predict, but I'm not saying to people that I'm a political influencer. I'm going to prioritize whoever's elected like I have, we'll do our best to keep in mind the world's children and trying to continue to improve their condition.
Right. The foundation is soon reaching 25 years. Obviously, there's been a change. Your ex-wife quit the foundation a few weeks ago. You regretted it. We know she very much wants to advocate for women. Are you planning maybe to shift your priorities, or are you going to continue doing exactly what you've been doing for the 25 years?
Our commitment to women and children is completely unchanged. Melinda did a fantastic job at the Gates Foundation and helped pick the things that we focus on, and there won't be any huge change. We're always tuning things as we have, breakthroughs in one area or another area might go slower. But, this basic focus on saving children's lives, solving malnutrition. I love the work of the foundation. It has been very successful. Partnerships like we've had with France have been central to that. So the message that if we put modest resources in, we can uplift the poor countries. That's still very much the core of what we do.
And you're not slowing down with the foundation?
No, actually, the foundation is achieving its largest size. We'll be spending next year $9 billion. And so we've been ramping up over the history of the foundation. We started at $1 billion, and we've gone up pretty steadily, and now we're getting to $9 billion.
Bill Gates, I want to thank you very much for appearing here on France 24. And I want to thank you all for watching this interview.